Welcome this morning to our Community Church Unitarian Universalist. I am Alicia, your worship associate, and it is a joy to be with you here today. So who we are we as Community Church? We are a progressive, open-minded, and inclusive religious community. We welcome all who are on a spiritual journey for truth and meaning. Ours is a faith in action as we do the work of social justice and elevate the compassion in our quest to live ethically, recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every being. We do have some announcements in our weekly email, and after I do our land acknowledgement, I'll bring up a couple other folks who have announcements for you today. But first, we want to acknowledge and pay tribute to the original inhabitants of this land. The city of New Orleans is a continuation of an indigenous trade hub on the Mississippi River, known for thousands of years as Bulbancha. Tribes that have lived on this land include the Caddo, the Natchez, the Choctaw, Chitimacha, Houma, Tunica, Biloxi, Aracapa Isha, and others. We recognize that as a result of broken treaties and involuntary removals, Native Americans were often forced from their lands. We remember and pay respect to the communities impacted by these actions. Native peoples have lived on this land since time immemorial, and the resilient voices of Native Americans remain an inseparable part of our local culture. With gratitude and honor, we acknowledge the indigenous nations that have lived and continue to thrive here. We have a few announcements. I'll bring up Marcia.
Good morning. Good morning. All right, next Sunday, August 22nd, the Finance Committee, headed by Kathy Larimore, will be making a presentation immediately following the Sunday service. They will be discussing our current budget, including the status of pledges received for the fiscal year and expenditures that we will be facing. The committee would also like to use this time to give members of the congregation an opportunity to ask questions and offer input and suggestions as to how we might need to restructure our budget in order to continue to thrive and grow as a faith community. If you are able, please plan on attending. Thank you.
So, a few things happening in September I want to highlight. I've had a couple of RSVPs for our drag brunch in September. And if you've gone to a drag brunch, you know how much fun it is. And if you haven't gone to one, come with a group of us and find out how much fun it is. It's going to be in a Bywater neighborhood and a place that's traditionally been doing drag brunch for the LGBTQ community for quite some years now. Another announcement I want to do is we have a small ad going out in the Gazette this upcoming week highlighting some of our animal-friendly services that will be occurring. And Michelle Firestone is giving our sermon next Sunday on animals. We're going to have our animal blessing the second Sunday of September. The community is invited to that. We're also going to have start exploring healthy recipes with each other, doing some potlucks. And so next week, to kick that off, we're going to do, for those interested, a recipe exchange and bring your healthy, ideally vegetarian recipes that maybe we can start exchanging with each other, and then we're going to turn some of those recipes into our brunches or lunches after services in September. So as much of the congregation knows, I gave notice, and it was something that I had grief and pain and sharing with you. And I mentioned everyone's going through their own process on that. And so I'll be talking more about what that departure looks like over the next few weeks, but I will be here at least through this September. And some of the guest speakers that are already lined up for October, November, and December include Reverend Steve Crump, Union Minister Leslie Reynolds. We have Reverend Jane Malden coming for a couple Sunday services in the fall. And then there's also, I'll be putting more information on it, but Baton Rouge congregation is hosting kind of a Southern UU tent revival weekend in, I think, mid-October. I think it's the third weekend in October, it could be the second. And encourage everyone to go up there, but of course we'll leave the church open. So looking for someone who's pretty confident that they won't be going to Baton Rouge to kind of create, have some community gathering here for those who don't want to drive up to Baton Rouge, but start thinking about carpooling options. They're inviting every Southern Louisiana and church to this weekend event, and you're encouraged to bring your campers, book an Airbnb if you want to do the whole weekend. It's a Saturday and Sunday event. So as we know, it's just change is inevitable. It's happening constantly in our bodies and our minds, our surroundings, our conditions, and sometimes they're planned, sometimes they're unplanned. We age, we evolve, we regress, we become elated, we become filled with angst, and we can go in stride of the change, recognizing it in these moments of life, and we cling on to the things that we just wish wouldn't change, and then we repel what we don't like. And I hope with this change, at every moment, there's always reflection and change of what's possible and how change can just create beautiful moments as well as the challenges that come with them, and how to move forward in the midst of change, and to be able to do that in such a blessed community, such as Community Church. So please reach out to me at any time. I'm here for at least a few more weeks. So my opening words are from Unitarian Universalist Amy Mackenzie Quinn. Welcome to this common, sacred space. Common because we are all welcome. Sacred because here we transform the ordinary and attend to the profound. We carry with us our regrets, our doubts, our fears, our stories, our laughter. May they inspire our worship. Above all, may we each meet what we need most to find. And on this day, we come together in this common, sacred space.
Let us now prepare for worship with our chalice lighting. It is Community Church's custom to light a chalice, invoking hope and eternal truth to our worship. Please join us in singing We Light This Flame with the words printed in your order of service.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. morning I'm going to share with you an excerpt from my Barbenheimer childhood by Tammy Hepps. I saw a movie this past weekend that brought me back to my most cherished childhood memories. In fact, it took me 15 minutes to find myself overcome with emotion. The movie was Oppenheimer. And the scene that brought me to tears was when the young professor asked his first graduate student, "Is light a particle or a wave?" I too was asked this question, only I was 7 or 8. The questioner was my father. We were in the basement of our house, a dim, unfinished space of concrete and cobwebs, where he set up blackboard to teach physics to me and my sister. He explained step by step from the particles that comprise matter, that forces that act upon them, how all the solidness around me was really just empty clouds. More than any of his strange science, I remember the stories my father told us about his heroes, the great physicists who had discovered all of this. When he pointed to the bare light bulb overhead and asked us that question about the nature of light that no one could not answer, he proposed for us a mission. "I give you until you are 40 to figure out the answer," he choked. The attic of our house, in contrast, was bright, finished space with a steeply sloped ceiling pierced by a skylight. My sister and I turned it into Barbie land, home of dozens of dolls and their houses, cars, clothes, and play set. The room and its toys became conduits for the stories we wanted to tell. Long and elaborate intersecting narrative that swept up all the Barbies into dramatic adventures. Through them, we acted out our own ideas of the world, evolving conceptions about people and relationships. We played all day and wasted no time. My sister's childhood diary records. All this fun went on until my parents announced we were moving. The new house had nowhere to recreate Barbie land. Although at 11, I wasn't ready to be done with Barbies, I felt it was right to move on. We created a closing ceremony for Barbie land, modeled after the end of the summer rituals from overnight camp, and then I packed up the room. As childhood slipped behind me, schoolwork became my focus. I excelled in math and science, albeit not at my father's elite level, and wondered what my own career in science might look like. Though Barbie land was gone, I never grew out of the creative play of childhood. All the storytelling and craft projects I was supposed to set aside in service of becoming a serious adult. Throughout high school and college, I felt like my interests careened from one extreme to the other. Science versus humanity, logic versus creativity, but everyone around me reinforced that only half of my pursuits were worthy of my intellect. The eventual crisis came when I entered my senior year of Harvard with no major. I look back to all the happy afternoons I spent junior year doing programming assignments I wasn't supposed to like, and settled on computer science. After graduation, I started work as a software developer in New York City. It sure seemed like I made my choice at last. I built a career in technology for almost 14 years, and on the side I wrote and baked and crafted and did genealogy and even took years of classes at Juilliard. But unlike my father, I obsessed over my unfulfilled creative side. No matter how well I did professionally, I felt like there was an unanswered question looming above. Barbenheimer may be an international phenomenon that has drawn thousands of people into its orbit, but it feels uniquely personal to me. I can't imagine anyone who had the same excitement at spotting astronaut Barbie as I did. I, Rocky, recognizing day to night Barbie's outfit as Richard Priman's bungalows. Perhaps my greatest joy in seeing so many stories from my childhood on the big screen is that it no longer provokes such anguish for me to revel in both. I have made no discoveries about the nature of light, but I did figure out before I turned 40 what would bring most light into my life. Scientists are no longer troubled that light is both a particle and a wave. And Barbenheimer reminded me, I too finally found that long elusive peace with my own duality. The end. Please sing with me, the children out to Ari. Thank you.
So now is our sacred time of joys and sorrows. If you have a need to share with this community, whether it be expressing something that weighs heavy on your heart these days, or letting us know what reason there is to celebrate, you may write your message in the cards which are out in our lobby. You can write in the chat box if you are visiting us online, or after our musical interlude, you can also come up to the microphone to share with the congregation. And you may remain seated as we sing our next hymn, which is 296, O Ye Who Taste That Life is Sweet.
Oh,
So from Alan in Maryland, sorrow at the death of Barbara Green, a dear friend from North Shore dating back to 1998. Is there anything else that folks would like to share with us, Carol?
Hi, my name is Carol, and for those of you who may not know me, I was the first member to sign our membership book in January 2003. So I'm proud to be here. I always have a lot going on, happiness and sadness. I just don't get up and share it. And today, my happiness is I'm wearing all this pink in honor of Barbie. She brought much happiness and fun into my life as a child, and my friends, and younger people, and now as adults. And so I honor all the happiness that she brings to so many people. And my deep sadness is that I'm going to miss Reverend Stacy. And I will keep her with me at all times, and I appreciate all she's done for our church.
So for my family, the unthinkable has happened. For so many years, I lived in Houston, and my daughter lived here, and one of my daughters lived here, and we've always been worried about hurricanes. And my younger daughter lives in LA, and she's getting hit by a hurricane this week. And we cannot believe it. So.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? I will add my own because I always have so much to say once the school year is back in session. There's always a lot of emotions there. Over the summer, a graduate from our school was killed by a 14-year-old at a gas station who just thought that he looked at him the wrong way. And so the epidemic of gun violence in this city and other cities is always just very, very close. It is a daily reality to so many of our young people. Another daily reality here and in Baton Rouge are buses that just don't run. And to me, it sounds like a little thing, but it's one of those failures of a city to really invest in its young people. It's the most basic responsibility a city has, is to invest in its young people and get them to school. They don't seem to be capable of doing it. It's also just a time of joy just to meet so many young people and have so much energy in the building. They're resilient, they're wonderful, they believe climate change is real, which is a big thing. And so there's always a lot of great joy that also comes with bringing that energy back at the end of the summer. And we will light 2 more candles, one's for the joys left unsaid, perhaps still waiting to be shared, and one for the sorrows left unsaid, perhaps that we cannot yet put words to. Know that we love you and that we hold you in our hearts.
So this is a time for our offering, and we on Sunday share the plate with a nonprofit that the Social Justice Ministry team has picked out earlier in the year. And so for the month of August, we are sharing the plate with Southeast Louisiana Legal Services. This nonprofit offers generosity and legal expertise for those who can't afford it, often from marginalized communities that don't have the privilege privilege or means to be able to traditionally have the means, finances to defend for themselves. So this nonprofit does great work for bringing justice to New Orleans and Southeast Louisiana. So you can give online, and then there'll be a plate being passed around if you would like to give to the plate, and then unless otherwise noted, such as a pledge, 50% of all things, all funds collected today will go to Southeast Louisiana Legal Services. So thank you for your generosity, and we will now sing hymn number 323, Break Not the Circle, and you can remain seated. That's part of why I quit my job, because I was in and out of feeling suicidal and I just wanted to stop hurting. So many of the people I knew were obviously hurting too, but they were trying to cover it up with addictions, overworking, disassociating, and defense mechanisms like denial. I didn't want to numb or otherwise avoid the painful feelings I was having, but it felt like feeling my pain was going to be a full-time job for a while. My grief was so consuming, and I had stuffed down a decade of past grief alongside it. That I was afraid I'd be flooded if I allowed myself to feel the torrent of grief I could sense was running like a current of rapids under my barely dressed up heart. Like many do, I turned to the spiritual path to help me cope. Experimenting with retreats, walking the labyrinth of Grace Cathedral, pilgrimage to sacred sites, shamanic drumming, guided meditation, silent meditation retreats, yoga, prayer, indigenous spirituality, self-help books, and spiritual conferences. And pretty much every other spirituality du jour experience one could have without trying drugs or plant medicines. I became a spiritual tourist, bliss hunting for the next spiritual high, until I realized I had just found another way to bypass my pain. I was using spirituality to avoid feeling not just my own personal pain, but the global pain I could feel in my own heart and body. That's when I started studying the shadow of spirituality and learned about spiritual bypassing. In its essence, spiritual bypassing refers to any way in which we use our spirituality to bypass painful emotions, like despair, anger, disappointment, jealousy, or loneliness. Spirituality bypassing author Robert Masters writes, "We tend not to have very much tolerance, both personally and collectively, for facing, entering, and working through our pain, strongly preferring pain-numbing solutions, regardless of how much suffering such remedies may catalyze. Because this preference has so deeply and thoroughly infiltrated our culture that it has become all but normalized, spiritual bypassing fits almost seamlessly into our collective habit of turning away from what is painful. Spiritual bypassing is a very persistent shadow of spirituality, manifesting in other ways, often without being acknowledged as such. Aspects of spiritual bypassing include exaggerated detachment, emotional numbing and repression, overemphasis on the positive, anger phobia, blind or overtly tolerant compassion, weak or too porous boundaries, and delusions of having arrived at a higher level of being." So says Masters. So she continues, "We have to remember that it hurts to be human, and pain is always here for a reason. Pain is usually our body's or our heart's way of saying, pay attention. Something is out of whack and needs to be healed." We use avoidance in holy ways to avoid pain. We limit the growth our souls crave. So newsflash, it hurts to be human. Being human hurts. We try so hard to avoid this fact, doing our best to numb ourselves with various addictions, overwork, obsessive love affairs, positive psychology, and or spiritual bypassing techniques to try to love and light our way past the pain. But no matter how you run away from that pain, pain will track you down, she continues, and stalking you like a leopard until you finally drive down into it and really let it devour you. We have to let go of all the ways, we have to go all the way into our traumas before it can begin to release us. Open our hearts and show us that at the pit of our pain, all we meet is paradoxically unconditional love. And is that what we're so afraid of? Love? Spiritual bypassing can be a healthy tool when we need it, such as when I was attacked by a pit bull. It was helpful to be able to use my meditation training to be able to bypass the intense pain of the acute injury. If you're in the midst of acute trauma, go ahead and use spiritual bypassing. But we can't outrun the pain forever. We can delay it until we're emotionally and physically equipped to handle it, until we have the emotional resilience to be able to be with that much pain without killing ourselves, harming someone else, or just going crazy. Spiritual bypassing sure beats other numbing and bypassing techniques, such as addictions, that harm the body. But ultimately, we have to find within us the strength to go down the rabbit hole of our pains. And we can't do that alone. We need each other. We need our tribe. We need our personal connection to a divine source. We need therapists and spiritual counselors and soul friends who can hold our hands as we venture in to that scary, painful unknown. Only then can we truly, deeply, fully heal. May we all find that fortitude so that we can do what we must in order to be who we must. And so now for the sermon on Barbenheimer. many know, it was all the talk at the end of July, whether you heard it on NPR, the New York Times, Huffington Post, among other media outlets. July 21st, the two biggest movie events of the summer. Oppenheimer, about building and detonating the first atomic bombs in the world, whether the test sites Nagasaki or Hiroshima. And Barbie, written and produced by the brilliant Greta Gerwig. Could both be seen as a double feature in what has now been coined as Barbenheimer. The recommended order of watching these two movies was to see Oppenheimer first, and after that depressing note, why don't we see Barbie? Due to various factors, I saw Barbie first with my sister, and then Oppenheimer the next day with my mother while I was visiting in Seattle. The movies released by the studios had the initial idea if they were going to release two very different movies, theoretically different audiences. Release these two movies on the same weekend, bringing large audiences to the movies at the height of the summer blockbuster movie weekends. Instead of classic rivalry for movie watching, or what's known as counter-programming, what would it be like to see these two movies together in tandem? And so I succumbed, like many, to the cultural popularity trend of that weekend with my mother and sister. Oppenheimer is expected to win many Academy Awards, whether acting, directing, screenplay, editing, or production. And Barbie is a very smart production too, but as you might imagine, not quite as deep in historical contexts. And after seeing both, I think the recommended order by most is wrong. See Barbie first, not last, and see Oppenheimer last, but not first. But I will talk about Oppenheimer first, without giving away too much of the film, and not really any of the film if you know World War II history well. Oppenheimer is credited with designing the atomic bomb that obliterated Hiroshima and Nagasaki on August 6th and 9th of 1945, killing up to 226,000 people. Preceding this were the bombing and firebombing of 64 Japanese cities, causing up to another 900,000 deaths. Oppenheimer had his early career as a professor at the University of California, Berkeley. The government recruited him to lead the nuclear fission war design efforts in competing against Germany and Russia to get the first effective atomic bomb. At each turn, Oppenheimer and his colleagues are faced with ethical dilemmas, with each one having consequences for the future. As history shows, Japan lost over 1 million innocent lives in a series of decisions that would change humanity forever. Debates of democracy, fascism, socialism, and communism were all being debated, and McCarthyism was active at the end of World War II with many consequences for the scientific community. Many liberals, including teachers and scientists, lost their jobs during the Red Scare. As with all things difficult, and with some unethical decisions that maybe we've made in our lives, the decision of the atomic bomb still haunts the collective living, with the ramifications of a nation that ordered the killings of up to 1 million in Japan alone, with another 50 million souls dying worldwide. And for Oppenheimer, those ethics were documented to haunt him his whole life. The what-ifs, the should-haves, the could-haves, the would-haves play over and over in all our heads at decisions that we second-guess. But for Oppenheimer, his responsibility to humanity was at a scale that is hard to imagine. So the double feature, in the order I watch, ended on this sobering note, instead of the high note of Barbie. On the recommended order of viewing by many, why end on this downer note? Go see Barbie and you feel better, and contemplating all that is wonderful in the world that we now live. Barbie begins with the storylines that many who played with Barbie's alternate play world experience. in their pretend world. Now, I grew up with Barbie. I had the dream boat, I had the dream house, and sometimes I'm embarrassed to admit it, but there were some wonderful Barbie figures that have come out over the years. My sister, on the other hand, was one of those people that just hated Barbie, but loved like the movie. And also, as society has linked to Barbie, is this supposed idealized figure of a woman with a great wardrobe and having fun with her Barbie friends. You too can have a wonderful figure, suntan on your yacht, and live the dream life of Barbie in your pretend world. Well, Barbie in the movie soon realizes that this is an alternative dream world that she lives in. And there is a world that is darker, which her privilege has blinded her to. The movie uses wit, style, and playfulness to get to some of the troubling aspects of being in a pretend world, or bypassing the painful realities of this world. And over the decades of the Barbie empire came Barbie the judge, Barbie the engineer, Barbie the professor, among other professions. Now, the Malibu Barbie of 1971 became the most well-known, best-selling, and recognized Barbie of the Barbie collection over the years. So many people, primarily young girls who grew up with Barbie, might have seen these role models in Barbie the professor and Barbie the astronaut, where those role models were few and far between, particularly in some of the earlier days of Barbie. The movie celebrates this aspect of Barbie, which it should. Women contributing to all levels of society with their insight and intelligence. And yet I wonder why, to this date, I don't know of a Barbie mother in a cage with her children who were so brave to risk their lives in the hopes of saving precious lives. Or Barbie, the immigrant mother who holds down 3 jobs, including housekeeping, so her children can have the possibility of a prospering education in school and childhood. Or Barbie, who escapes domestic violence and then works to save others from the same. Or the Barbie that survived a heinous sex trafficking experience and now helps other women. Aren't all these women worthy of being heroes and celebrated too? So I find that even empowering Barbies highlights that when life gets too dark, too dirty, just look on the bright side of the possibility of life and the equal access to the sunny beaches of California to see that everything is good and possible. But yes, there is still war, sex trafficking, murder, thieves, and gaslighters. And the shadow of our decisions and existence in this life that are permeated with suffering, as our earlier reading points to, we need space for reflection, repentance, forgiveness, sadness, crying, grief, and accountability to those who have engaged and continue to engage in suffering. Barbie is a worthwhile movie to watch, and some have found value in just alone the brief moment when Barbie ponders death, albeit too briefly, as her friends are shocked to hear this, and Barbie leads the party back to brighter spirits. Bypass trauma and challenges is what society often encourages. There is a point in the movie where Barbie and her perpetual sidekick Ken get swept into the real universe, and where Barbie sees shockingly for the first time the masochistic and patriarchal leanings of society. Ken also learns some of these lessons to take back to Barbie Land, much to the dismay of fellow Barbies. I haven't given anything too much away in the movie yet, if you haven't seen it, especially if you've seen a preview or listened to the reviews, such as what's been on NPR. There are nuances to the movie, and different subtle interpretations can arise in reflecting on this movie. But also it is a movie co-produced by Mattel, and so certain messages that they also want you to walk away with. I have seen an interview with the writer and director, Greta Gerwig, having some reflection with certain requests in these reflections on how it was co-produced with Mattel. and whether or not compromises had to be met. And in the typical recommended Barbenheimer viewing order, why not end with music, pink, dance, and fun? And yes, also to reflect on what is possible after depression and remorse are experienced. So maybe on that note, it isn't such a bad order to view these two movies, Oppenheimer, then Barbie. What are not only the endings at World War II, but so we have endings, such as Oppenheimer. What happens at the end of World War II? But what can also come after reflections and remorse and grief? For example, with a Japanese family whose grandparents were burned with atomic ash. Or what are the current endings of oil fields pumping out supplies to make more plastic? But yet, what are the possibilities so that this isn't our ending of saving the earth in days ahead? We can look at the current climax of women on the Supreme Court with Amy Coney Barrett. But what progressive women can be appointed in the decades ahead? Or trans folks living in states where passages of about 30 out of 50 states are having anti-trans bills that are being enacted right now. This can't be our ending. We see where policies are being created in society to create healthy spaces in this dangerous time. There are horrific events with current troubled endings. But maybe that is the thing with seeing Barbie after Oppenheimer. They don't have to be our endings. New opportunities to reassess where we are at in life and to engage in hope and possibility. But we can't bypass the pain, the grief, or the horror either. So where are our rebellious, activist, angry, and depressed Barbies of the world? The Barbies that don't bypass the suffering of the world, but help to deeply transform it through our challenging everyday experiences. There is one Barbie character in the movie, because all the women in Barbie Land are named Barbie, so they have different adjectives. And so we have weird Barbie. So if you had a Barbie growing up and played with friends and weren't gentle with the doll, then sometimes that perfectly combed hair becomes ratted and teased. Sometimes pen marks are on her face and clothing that was ripped off after tough play, maybe even an arm or leg ripped off. There can be non-traditional Barbies, and Barbies, at least briefly, who contemplate death. But I wish there was more of this in the film. If our heroes include immigrant mothers, if our heroes include survivors of domestic violence and sex trafficking, if our heroes include all the volunteers that engage in the suffering of this world, how would that ending be a more beautiful world that is possible? Hopefully, the Barbies of tomorrow don't embrace an escapism that looks at life with rose-colored glasses. Tackle homelessness, but don't have the homeless in Barbie Land. Fight for equality, but stay comfortable. And support welfare, but don't have coffee and parties with these mothers. Support trans lives, but don't center them in your celebrations and sorrows of life. So if Barbie is the ending in the double feature, Barbie has a lot of serious weight on her shoulders in the days ahead. And through the accumulated and oppressive male-dominated decisions of the world, think Oppenheimer, for example, that still have a ripple effect in today's societies. I would argue that the real world as it stands now doesn't end as the movie Barbie did, and it can't afford it to fully end there. If pink and sunshine is how we want our story to end, and we have the privilege to end it that way, we aren't truly engaged with the suffering of this collective world. Albeit joy is essential, love is essential, compassion is essential, and in that way, we can always celebrate Barbie. We will extinguish our chalice here, that it might flow gently in our hearts. May it light your path as you leave this place, and may it guide you until we are together again. So my closing words for you are from Unitarian Universalist Kimberly Quinn Johnson. And she uses a phrase which she refers to over and over again. We are the ones we are waiting for, which she gives credit to June Jordan, Poem for South African Women, which she presented at the United Nations on August 9th, 1978. We are the ones we have been waiting for. We are not perfect, but we are perfectly fitted for this day. We are not without fault, but we can be honest to face our past as we chart a new future. We are the ones we have been waiting for. May we be bold and courageous to chart that new future. May we have faith in a future that is not known. We are the ones that we have been waiting for. And now for our closing song that Nicholas will lead us in, Atomic Energy, which some of us are familiar with from Reverend Chaplin's sermon.
It's up to the people to crusade, to see that no more bombs are made, that this great force should only be used for peace and democracy. It happens over and over.